Excuse me. All these majors, all the majors, mayores. I don't know. Anyway, hello everybody, and welcome to what is hopefully the shortest live on my channel. We sprung forward yesterday here in some parts of the U.S. that observe, and the Wheel of Fortune. What's up with all the first one? It was Awakening, which is Judgment, the Chariot, Justice, the Lovers, and now the Wheel of Fortune. Anyway, I'm just trying to shuffle the cards. So we sprung forward, which means that we are caught up to the rest of the world by an hour, and further away from the other part of the world by an hour if they didn't also leap. So like I'm 2 hours ahead of like a friend now, but I'm like an hour closer to a friend that was like conveniently 11 and a half hours ahead of me in India. And so it was like subtract half an hour and then switch AM to PM. But now it's like 10 and a half hours and it's more confusing. So being closer together is more chronologically difficult. But anyway, I had an idea. The Queen of Wands, she was at the bottom of the deck when the Wheel of Fortune came out. I had an idea to pull cards for the missing hour, or that hour in between. Well, there's the Magician and the Nine of Swords. Lots of majors. So for that hour in between, and I don't know if it's an hour recovered or if it's an hour lost. Hey, Kirsty, how you doing? I've been meaning to ask how dinner went. I hope it went well. I'm sure it did, but I've been meaning to ask anyway. I was kind of hoping I'd see you and be like, "How was dinner?" I was looking at tickets last night. Yeah, I was looking at tickets yesterday because I'm ready to go back. And I sent a screenshot to my friend, and I was like, I could be there. It was like March 26th to April 16th. You had a lovely time and ate lots of cake. Oh, I will hopefully get some cake. So it's hold down time. Hey, Sandra, how you doing? Do y'all observe daylight savings? So I have the Elemental Oracle, and then I'm going to clarify with the Tarot of the Abyss. But for that missing hour, I just want to see what's up, if it gives me anything. And hopefully it's not like, oh, there we go, 20 minutes long. So the card that came out is Alchemy Magic. The lighting situation, if you can tell by my glasses, I don't have a huge TV of pure white light in front of me. So it's not going to be as good as it usually is, quote unquote. Magic, alchemy. Number 43 is the missing hour, or the recovered hour. There were a lot of majors that were coming out. Yeah, so you're extra sleepy? Okay, yeah. It sucks in the spring, but we love it in the fall. Oh, snap. The bottom of the deck is number 42. 43 came out, 42 at the bottom of the deck, which is speed, movement. So we have movement and magic with the moon under that, which is a 7. 43 is a 7. The 3 M's, movement, moon, and magic. Interesting. I guess it's also interesting because there was something about that Libra waning moon that came out in the Angelarium. But like I said, hopefully this will be fairly short. You do on 20th March? 26th March. Oh, that's the day I was looking at coming because it was green. So this magic, alchemy, the 9 of Pentacles. Did something else flip over inside? It might have, but it doesn't look like it. This Nine of Pentacles is interesting. This actually makes me think of the Three of Swords in this deck. Hey David, how you doing? But it's the Three of Swords where there's like the bird-shaped hole in her chest and the bird is flying out. But this is like an older, it's like the same woman but older here. Now she's holding out the bird, offering it, but maybe it's just returned home. Oh. Oof. Bottom of the deck is the Knight of Pentacles. And he has a key around his neck. It's interesting that this Knight of Pentacles isn't like the one that I got. Because this knight is actually walking. But he has a key around his neck. And under that Knight of Pentacles is the Queen of Pentacles. And the other Three of Swords. So this isn't the Three of Swords I was looking for. The Queen of Pentacles, the Three of Swords, and the Fool. Nine of Cups is under that Fool. Nine of Cups to Nine of Pentacles. So the Knight of Pentacles is about conscious efforts. It's about conscious efforts, determination, and the investment of time. The Queen of Pentacles feels like, oh, see, she came up before. Because I remember that, or maybe it wasn't her, but I remember that door in the ground. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was her. He has the key around his neck. She's used that key to unlock this trap door, and that's what she's pulling the pentacle from. She's pulling the pentacle from that trap door. And then we have this Three of Swords with the Fool. Nine of Cups. This just like, I feel like warped my brain. I was going to go, also, let me go looking for it. The other Three of Swords. Here it is, right here, in between the Wise One and the Magician. There's our majors. The Four of Cups and the World. The Four of Cups and the World is outside of this window. And then the Nine of Wands is behind that Four of Cups. Nine of Pentacles, Nine of Cups, Nine of Wands. So the Wise One is the Hierophant, and then the Magician are on both sides of this Three of Swords. See? Her with the bird-shaped hole, and she's letting it go. And the Nine of Pentacles, it feels like it returns. But look how much time passes. Which is what so here's the Magician and the Wise One. And it's interesting because it feels like they're both working with the element of fire, but one is like an internal fire and one is an external fire. Wearing your TARDIS t-shirt today? This is, oh, the Magician is a tree. And we have all this Pentacles energy. Nine of Pentacles, Knight of Pentacles, Queen of Pentacles. and he's a tree. Pentacles are earth. I was gonna say it's this magician is interesting because usually the magician is depicted with all four aces, symbolizing all four elements, but we don't really see that here. So it's almost like there's an implicit understanding of the fact that like it's both that the tree like grows from the earth, it requires water and gas, which is the air, and sunlight, which is the fire, to live and thrive. And this is definitely a tree that's not it may not be in bloom right now, but it's not a tree that's suffering for lack of, nutrition or a good environment. Um it's that, but it's also I've been thinking about ether, I guess, lately, or because it was a while ago. It was I think it was in the capital I versus the EYE. It was like when we can understand the elements as each other and as themselves, then we come into this greater understanding of what maybe it's just like a greater understanding of like life force or energy. And I was thinking about it, how it's almost like how we can view everything as consciousness, like that would be ether. Like it can be in a person, in a plant, it can also be inanimate, it can be anything. And why do I mention that here? Because the elements aren't present, but like the magician, I guess it does retain that as above, so below, because we see the roots below and the canopy above, and then the magician is in the middle, which is also interesting because I've also been thinking about or feeling that, or more of a question. It's been a question of if that above below relationship, like if there isn't an in between in that, and if the in between can buffer the above and below. It's almost like we can insert, like there's an above here and a below there, right? But we can insert, okay, let's try to do it like this. There's this above and this below, but we can insert an energy and it almost acts like a filter. So there are some things in the above that get stuck here that don't bleed through to the below. There are some things in the below that also get caught here and they don't match in the above. And so it's almost like when you project light and you put those like filters or like a polarized whatever in front of it. So some of the light passes through, but not all of it passes through. It's like if there's something here that keeps that mirroring relationship from always sort of being extremely present or noticeable. And interesting, it was the Three of Swords in between, right? Well, of course, it was the Three of Swords in between. I looked before and after it. The weird part is, though, I don't necessarily think or know if this is the person that we're looking for. I mean, I pulled her anyway, but after looking at the Queen of Pentacles, it's like with this Knight of Pentacles who had the key, maybe being led by the horse somewhere, maybe doing, who knows what. She finds this pentacle in this trap door, right? It feels like this is the Queen of Pentacles. And then when she gets older, it comes time for her to leave things, leave whatever for the next generation. And it's the Nine of Pentacles. The Nine of Pentacles represents financial stability and independence and stuff like that. It's like being very comfortable. Not necessarily opulence, but very, very comfortable. And it's not to say that they can't all be the same person. But then it was interesting that, like, the older would approach before the younger too, which gave it some weird like time, whatever. But it's alchemy, magic, movement in the moon, right? Magic, movement in the moon. I mean, these two by themselves are interesting because it feels like she's like running from this darkness. Did I expect this to be simple? This is not going to be longer than 20 minutes long. So if I don't get there, I mean, like it feels like this is it. The missing hour is like a catch up. It's almost like we removed time, and now that we put it back, it's almost like things speed up and accelerate to account for when it was stopped. It's like if you have 20 minutes to run a race and you like walk for the first 5 minutes and then you take a nap for 10 minutes and then you have 5 minutes left to finish the race, you have to pick up the pace. So it's like returned. It's not really, it's like in the grand scheme of things, it balances out. In the overall, if you black box the process from beginning to end, it's the same amount of time. Whether you walk steadily for 20 minutes and finish, whether you walk, run, walk, run, or whether you don't start until the 19th minute and then you finish it in a minute. From start to finish, it all happens in that same 20 minutes. Um, and this Hierophant here is interesting as well. It was just 17, 17 on the clock. This Hierophant, because we have this older woman here, maybe. What's the Hierophant telling me? The Hierophant is interesting in this deck because it's not like a religious figure. I mean, I guess I would say it's interesting because it's not like an organized religion, but it's like a tribal elder. And so, in that way, it's almost like the organization doesn't really matter because it's still someone who's like venerated and respected within that community. Maybe it's interesting because with tribal elder symbolism or imagery, it often feels more like one who is in touch and in tune with the natural world, who goes below the natural to find the spiritual, rather than one who like transcends the natural to find the spiritual. It's like looking around you and seeing the divine in everything rather than doing this more like Sagittarius thinking. It feels like even with like intuition and discernment, like that feels a lot more cerebral than just like looking out and being able to see it. That feels more water. And so maybe that's more like Pisces Jupiter rather than like Sagittarius Jupiter. Like the tribal elder is like in it, and the Hierophant feels like it tries to elevate itself above it. I mean, either way, right? With the thing in the middle, you sort of get where you're going. But it makes sense. That's why, like, the magician is here because the tribal elder is like in it. But again, it feels like that would be like a more below in between. The Hierophant, the traditional Hierophant would be like an above in between. There's something that needs to connect these two. And maybe that's what the magician is doing, if you can see it. The magician is like combining these sort of influences from like because we are in between. And there are things above us that mirror and match and play out. There are things below us that mirror and match and play out. But it's almost like we are the filter, we are the sieve that it sort of like passes through. And it makes me think of that Rahu Ketu versus like tropical North Node, South Node, where we completely abandon our South nodes and purely pursue the North Node. But with Rahu Ketu, it's almost like, we bring them together, we find wholeness in the middle. When we consider both, we get a more complete understanding. And it feels like that's what really moves this forward. And it's almost like, in essence, that's what alchemy is. The science of chemistry, it's such a deep understanding of like atoms and molecular forces and the different reactions that they have. But there's also the integration of this higher. So it feels a lot less almost forceful, I guess, than like a more like how I would interpret or feel about like manifestation and attraction. It's almost like if you put enough pressure on it in the spiritual, then it has to come down into the physical. And this feels more like working with what's here, adding what's missing. It's like that. It's like if there's something that you want to make and you know what you have at the refrigerator in your refrigerator in your pantry, you use what you have, but then you go to the store, you get what you don't have. You put it all together and cook it, rather than it feeling like the traditional. I guess the more modern manifestation and laws of attraction. It feels like you place the order, the universe fulfills that order. You ask, you get it. Hey, Steph, how you doing? And I'm already over 20 minutes. Excuse me. And maybe that's because I'm looking at like the Hierophant bringing two people together. And the Hierophant is usually shown with two people, but it's like the Hierophant is on their like throne or whatever on the papal seat. And then there are the people under the Hierophant that go to the Hierophant to get the knowledge and information. And it's like, yes, the Hierophant is in between these two, but it feels more like the Hierophant is sitting as equals. And again, it just feels like it's not that it's like the Hierophant in his age has wisdom, but this Hierophant, it's like he knows that he doesn't know everything, or it's like his wisdom, the amount of time that he spent doesn't put him above or before anyone else. It's the teacher who knows how to learn, or the teacher who is also still learning. There's a lot of like both here, like being both the teacher and the student. It's this above and below sort of meeting in the middle and how we sort of reconcile that. And so with the Nine of Pentacles, it's like the Hierophant is just like gives the information, gives the knowledge, gives the wisdom, knows that it's not necessarily all encompassing, knows that it isn't necessarily infallible. And I guess it's interesting because it's almost like because I'm looking at the Nine of Pentacles and I'm like, why is this magic? Why is this alchemy? But maybe in some way that is a magic that we like farming, cultivating, growing plants from a seed, tending to it, giving it what it needs, and then it sprouts. It starts as a tiny seed. It can become whatever, like depending on the seed, like the seed, that dictates what you get. But more often than not, the final size is a lot different than where you start, where you begin, right? And so maybe with the Knight of Pentacles, Queen of Pentacles, and there's almost like this intersection of energy between these, where it's like, no, I feel like I need to look before and after the Seven of Pentacles energy, but I won't because it's already approaching half an hour. Um, it's almost like there is a magic in knowing what something needs to grow, providing it, and then that thing blossoming, sprouting, germinating, and then bearing fruit, right? To go from a seed to an apple is almost like the same magical, spectacular, wonderful process. But then you realize that, like, the seed came from an apple. And that's where it feels like things get like weird. Maybe that's more magician. Because you get the seed from the plant. Are we getting a little like which came first, the chicken or the egg? Not necessarily. But yeah, it makes me it makes me think of Perry and like everything comes back to love. Cause it's like, is that not like, it seems like the most magical, miraculous, wonderful thing to be able to plant a seed, tend to it, and then it grows into something like that gives back. But I feel like it's such an everyday common thing that we don't necessarily see it as being as magical as it is all the time. So the Nine of Pentacles is the result of our hard work. It's the payoff. It's the apple that we get from the seed. The seed would be this Knight of Pentacles. It's the determination, it's the stick to itiveness, it's the time invested, it's us doing everything that we need to do to ensure that something pays off. And that is the key. Again, like this Knight of Pentacles isn't necessarily how, I guess, this Knight of Pentacles shows both the horse and the knight sort of moving. So it's this concentrated, concerted effort between the two of them. It's not just the knight on the horse sort of like directing the horse, right? Like when I read me. It's like you can stay on top of a horse, good job. Um, but it's the knight's efforts beside the horse. All right. Well, I'll be wrapping this up soon, but I hope it lasts too. I need to charge my phone because I got to help my grandma today. I was really hoping she would say she doesn't need me, but I love her, so I'll help her out. Like what we do is the key. It's almost like the world, the universe provides us the seeds, it provides us the planters and the soil and whatever, but we actually have to plant it and we have to tend to it. This is us planting and us tending to the thing. That is the key to unlocking from the earth or receiving from the earth whatever we receive to put us in this position of abundance at some point. But again, it almost feels very like the chicken or the egg because it's almost like if it was a vision that came through intuition or if it was a dream that we wish to have fulfilled. It's like if the desire comes before the fulfillment of that desire, it's like if that desire is held, it's almost like desire is the apple, and the fulfillment of that desire is the seed. So if we do the things that we need to do to make that dream a reality, then it's almost like it's not like the dream birth itself. And maybe that's why the magician is also important here. It's a hot 0 degrees. um, maybe that's why this magician is here as a sort of like it's important for us to realize, recognize, be aware, discern where things are coming from. Because it does almost feel like the dream sort of births itself. It's almost like there's this thing floating in the ether and someone picks it up or multiple people pick it up and then they all work towards it. It's like whenever there's a leap or sometimes when there's like a breakthrough, it'll happen in multiple points at roughly the same time. And it's that like, these ideas, these inventions are just like floating in the etheric energetic atmosphere and some people are in touch and in tune with them, and then they channel it, they do all of the legwork here to make it a reality. And so it's almost like the thing birthed itself. The person who invented it was just the vessel, was just the channel for that thing to be birthed through in some ways. I'm gonna just get one more card. What's interesting is though, ooh, who was this? Animals. West completion. Okay. Um maybe something is like sprinting out of the darkness. But it's not like a shadow. It's like something that is not yet born sprinting, like that 20-minute race. You can finish the race in like 20 seconds. If you can finish it in 20 seconds, you can finish it as quick as you can finish it. And it feels like something is trying to come in like 2 seconds rather than 20 minutes. So, um, and maybe that's also part of this magic. Maybe the magic, because going back to the thing, it's in how we tend to it. When we tend to it in a certain type of way, it's like usually like you plant the seed, you wait a certain amount of time, and then you like it pops up above the surface. And so a lot of times it's this like, don't be discouraged if you don't see it pop up within like a day or 2 days or a week or 2 weeks or a month or a year. The seed is still doing its thing. If you leave it in the dirt, eventually you will see whatever. And it's like that's the way that we're used to things operating. But the Knight of Pentacles, again, the Knight of Pentacles is the key to this Queen of Pentacles extracting that pentacle from the earth. It's almost like tending to it in such a way that the seed sprouts immediately. Like as soon as you put it in the ground, conditions are so favorable that it immediately takes root and it begins to shoot up and everything. And it feels like that's this like quickening magic or this fast alchemy. And so then that would be, it's like the cooking metaphor. You don't need to go to the store because you have everything you need at home. So maybe we've been acquiring ingredients. And it's funny because I got a bunch of like spices and stuff some time ago and I never used it. And now like now I'm using it. I'm using them. But it's like we were acquiring things the whole time. Again, like that's the Knight of Pentacles. And now it's almost like now it's time to use it. Now it's time to start cooking. And since we have all of the material, since we have the know-how, since we have the knowledge, since we've been paying attention to the above and the below, it's like we know how it all works together. It feels very intuitive. It feels like something that might be counterintuitive to someone who isn't prepared, and it's not about comparison. But it feels like something that might be viewed as counterintuitive to some, but to you, it's intuitive because you have all of the pieces. And when you have all of the pieces and you know what you're doing, it's almost like a dot to dot. It's like, if you've ever done connect the dots, but it's like when you have all the pieces, like you're putting numbers next to the dots, and then you just follow the numbers. And it's easy, it's intuitive. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this is the picture that it creates. But if you don't have the numbers, imagine trying to assemble the correct image from a bunch of dots and you don't have the numbers telling you the order to connect it in. And again, like that's why with this, it's like it's a magic that doesn't feel like magic. Should I just get a final? It's been 40 minutes. Knight of Cups. First, it was the Page of Wands. Then it was the Knight of Cups. We're seeing different elements sort of come in. Excuse me. But yeah, it was like, I don't know if it's like consciousness or if it's ether, but it was like it's the thing that is everything. It can be a rock, it can be a tree, it can be a person, it can be a blade of grass, it can be a whole field of flowers. It's that from which everything arises. Okay, that just spat itself out. Everything spitting out of the deck is like majors today. The Emperor, which is the box art for this deck. This is our final card from the Tarot of the Abyss. The Emperor, oh, I love this. He's holding in his hand that spinny orb thing that the magician had in the like in between the above and below. That's what the magician was like channeling everything through. And then the Emperor is also given the Ankh. There's two of them in this on the throne, gifted by the Empress. Like the Empress rules like the domain of life, but the Emperor is given whatever, and whatever. This also makes me think of, I had it and then I lost it. It was the Magician and the Five of Pentacles, I think. There was something about creating in a space that's been void. And so I don't know if this will be like, oh, I just lost it. Things that we've been more collectively wanting, demanding, and needing. It's like needs that have gone unfulfilled, but now they'll be met. It feels like there are a lot of like potholes that are now going to be filled, but the potholes are like gaps. And like we fill them. Just as we nurture ourselves, we nurture each other, we nurture the collective overall. Bottom of the deck is the Queen of Swords. Under that is the Seven of Swords. Under that is the Ace of Wands. These two are interesting. It's like the Queen of Swords creates, the Seven of Swords waits. The Seven of Swords waits for like light to break and for day to come and for this like aha moment. It's almost like waiting for a signal. The Queen of Swords, I don't want to say she creates it, but I think she does create it. The pommel stone of this sword, I think that's the right. If video games have taught me anything, and it may have been completely incorrect, the pommel stone of this sword is the star, is the light. Like that's where she holds the sword. She's gripping the blades right now, but when it's time for her to use the sword, that's where her hand goes. But there's something here that's very hermit energy. It's very deeply internally focused, very like reflective, introspective. But since it's the Queen of Swords, since it's a sword, it feels like it's a knowing or an understanding. I think sometimes it's like when we go inside, when we hermit, it can be very like cupsy or wandsy, where it's like we're getting to know ourselves and we're exploring ourselves in these very like deeply spiritual sort of ways or whatever. But it's almost like, and I think this goes back to the potholes being filled. It's almost like when we do that, it's like there are understandings that we can spiritually come to. There are things that we can like download, but there isn't much of a logical, analytical understanding of those things. It feels or it seems. This is like it's going within and it's knowing how all of the pieces connect and how everything works. It's like when the Queen of Swords goes within, she reverse engineers a thing. And maybe when the Seven of Swords goes within, all they find is like low hanging fruit. When the Seven of Swords goes within, they find all these issues, but then like somebody to blame. Oh, I'm like this because they did this, and I'm like that because somebody else did this. And so it creates this web of people and events and situations that are responsible for us being who we are and how we are. And then if we don't take that any further, we just get ensnared in that web and we just like live in it. It's almost like a question, maybe, but it's like, what's the good of like understanding the root of certain traumas if nothing is done to address it? And that's maybe what this feels like. It's like getting to the root of like traumas and getting to the root of this and getting to the root of that, but it's not necessarily doing anything to really remedy the situation. Knowing is half of the battle. That understanding is like vital and important, but again, it's like half of the battle. Where's the other half? Where's the follow through? Knight of Pentacles follows through. Queen of Pentacles follows through. Pentacles is the pseudo follow through. Unless you're talking about the five, and the Five of Pentacles is like no follow through. You're distraught because there's no follow through. I went here, I did the thing, I didn't get whatever. Um, but there's something deeper. And in the sword court, there's this maze behind all of them. There's this internal labyrinth. The Seven of Swords could also be the Minotaur at the heart of that internal labyrinth. But again, it makes me think of this like moving out of the dark energy. We see what looks like a female depicted in this card, and again, the Queen of Swords out of the two of these is the one who feels like she gets somewhere. Maybe that's her magic that prepares her to like navigate through the world, to navigate through darkness, to navigate through hurt, and navigate through trauma. And the Queen of Swords is such an easy energy. It's so easy to read the Queen of Swords as like jaded or cynical or bitter or cold hearted in response to the things that she's been through. It's like the Queen of Swords suffered misfortune, and because of that, now she is this no nonsense, cut right to the chase, whatever. It's interesting that the web came out, or the web imagery came up, because it was a long it was a long time ago. I remember the Page of Swords, it was the Daughter of Swords or the Son of Swords had this brand new idea. And the King of Swords in the Wild Unknown Tarot with the Rainbow Sword was like, okay, like it doesn't really seem like feasible, but sure, I'll go along with it. Come to find out, it's like amazing. The Queen of Swords, the Mother of Swords, was this energy of like, it was the Eight of Pentacles, which has a spider on it, the Queen of Swords, and then some other cards. It was like, been there, done that. I already know how this works. It's not going to play out that way, blah, blah, blah. It's like she's too quick to reach a decision. She is pre justice energy, but she's not major arcana justice. And it feels like it goes back to that Hierophant. It's like with age, with experience comes a certain wisdom, but that wisdom isn't necessarily all encompassing. And when the Hierophant, when the Queen of Swords allows themselves to sort of think that way and operate that way, that's when they can stand to miss out on a lot. That's when they can stand to keep themselves in situations that they've long outgrown because they already know everything, they already know how it works. They don't leave themselves room to be open. And again, like it feels like that's that Seven of Swords. It's like we go within, we find everyone to blame. We create this web of causality and events, but then we're trapped in it. We're stuck in it. We fall prey to it rather than using that sword to cut ourselves free. And that's the Emperor. This is like, it's almost like this is how we show up in the world. This is how we engage the world. This is how we command our presence. And do we do it from like which space do we do it from? You know? That's why it's like this magic, it is magic and it does like feel very fast, but with all of that Pentacles energy, it's the result of something. It doesn't just happen. Seeds don't just sprout, forests don't just come to be, things don't just spontaneously come into existence. There was a seed, there was an egg, there was an idea, there was an event that transpired to bring it into reality. And even if things did like spontaneously generate, it feels like that spontaneous generation would be the sublimation of something energetical, ethereal. It's like it's that ether before it becomes fire, water, air, earth, a person, a tree, or whatever. It's like there's this accumulation of ether that then drops and sublimates as something. But the collection of it is still the cause that, and the effect, the event would be the spontaneous, seemingly spontaneous generation. It's almost like how we view people as overnight successes. We think there's this like instant, spontaneous, wild success, but then you come to find out like the person's been making videos for 10 years. The person has been working on this idea for like 2 years. Like there's like things, there's stuff that goes behind it, right? Even if it was the very first video, it's like there's something about the know-how, there's something about the knowledge, there's something about the information that they gathered or their approach. Maybe even if their approach is like their authenticity and people just love it. There's something that predates everything, something that comes before everything. But with that Knight of Pentacles being like the linchpin for this, we don't always want to put in the time, the energy, the work, the effort to accumulate, to learn, to go where we need to go to make the thing happen. And so we spend like 20 years running a race that we were given 20 minutes to do that we could honestly do in 0.2 seconds if we really wanted to and if we had the follow through. But that is a magic. Like the fact that we can create things, the fact that we can tend to what is natural and nature will grow is like, right? And it feels like maybe that's a root of alchemy. Because it's like, if someone could turn lead into gold, we'd be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. But it's like, that's someone who understands chemistry. You put this metal in the presence of this other thing through this reaction or this series of reactions, you get a final outcome. It's not magic, it's science. It's magic if you don't know, it's science when you do know. And it feels like, again, like that's that Queen of Swords energy. That's the level of analytical, and it's not even analytical like thinking. It's just like these logical connections. It makes sense. That's why it's like it's intuitive, but it might be counterintuitive to somebody else. But when you have the numbers next to all the dots, it's not that hard to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8, and so on and so on. If you're just given a bunch of dots and you have to create it, like that's when it can get like really messy. Or not messy, but that's when it can get messy, and it can also be difficult. It's like it's an understanding that supersedes intuition, and it supersedes discernment because it's taught, or like it's treated as fact, right? Like if I look at a red apple and I go, this apple is red, like it's almost like that level. And it makes me think of Virgo. The last time I ran through all 12 signs and Virgo was at the very end, and it was like Virgo has this knowing that something is going to come around the bend, and Virgo is already doing the things now because they know that that's happening. From the outside, it might look like magic. Like, oh my gosh, Virgo, you're so like psychic, or you're so like manifesty or whatever. But Virgo's like, if you've been paying attention, you would have also seen the signs. It's like very like, you know. But anyway, on the floor, we have dark dark matter mystery at the bottom of the deck. And snow, silent snow. The card said, shh. Butterfly said, you're giving away all the secrets. Like, it's not a mystery. It's almost like choosing to ignore something, or choosing to not see something, or choosing to be blind to something. It's almost like, all right, I'm about to do a magic trick, y'all. I'm going to make this card flip over. Okay. Are you ready to see this magic trick? Oh my gosh, I did it. If you don't blink, if you don't close your eyes between me doing this and me doing that, you know it's not magic. If you close your eyes and then I do this and then you open your eyes, you may go, oh my gosh, how'd you do that? And that takes me back to, it was that, is it this 5 or 6 of Earth in the Dreams of Gaia Tarot? It's the one that's like holding the cards over here, but like holding the cards over here, but slipping your necklace over here. It's like, just pay attention. And that's not groundbreaking. That's not new. Everyone's talking about, oh, they're talking about this to distract us, or they're talking about that to distract us. And it feels like that goes back to that 7 of Swords. We're putting all of this on the web. This person's doing that. That person's doing this. They're trying to make us go this way, or trying to make us go that way. And we just sort of ensnare ourselves at ultimately in the end. But it's almost like, for me, it's this like, we can talk about government, we can talk about Hierophant, we can talk about organized religion, leading people to do this or leading people to do that. But at what point are people human enough to engage their own hearts and their own minds to actually like consider others or consider themselves? It's like how we look back on certain things in history and we can see it as like these things that should have never happened. Like, oh my gosh, how do we do that? Or why, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it was wrong when it was happening. And there have been people that have known the whole time, but we just like go with it. It's like, is somebody doing this? Is the government doing that? It's like we put so much outside of ourselves. But that's why for me, it's like, I find it hard, for me personally, I find it hard for me to believe in God, or for me to believe in the divine to the degree that I believe, but then also give governments and peoples and shady organizations or whoever so much power over my life or my reality or the goings on of things. Like, I can't understand how both can be held at the same time. That I believe that the divine is so omnipotent and infinitely powerful, while at the same time, a person or a few people are doing this and doing that. I don't know. Anyway, maybe I went off topic. The card at the bottom of the deck. Ah! Yeah, I gotta reach down here. Oh, it was just right here. Oh, hold up. Oh, it was right here. I think I'm pushing it back while I'm trying to grab it. Here we go. It's movement. It's speed. Can you see that? Can you see that? The biome connection is the number 44. Was the card at the top of the deck? Now it's dark matter. It's an 11. So before it was moving out of darkness, it was moving out of the moon. Now it's moving out of dark matter. Now it's like it's not this like it's dark matter feels like that sublimating in the ether and the energetic and the spiritual as it drops and spontaneously causes something to exist. But it's like even in the case of dark matter, like the dark matter was there and then it had some reaction that caused it to become matter in our phase of reality. We view that as magic because we don't know what's happening on the other side, right? We only know what's happening in the world of the realm of material. But anyway, that's it. I don't know. It's like again, it's not to take away from the like, oh my goshness of this, but it's also at the same time, it's like I don't. It's just it's complex. I guess maybe as my journey buddy would say, like there are some things that are complex and there are some things that are complicated. Like if it's complex in nature. It's not necessarily simple. If it's complicated, sometimes it's simple, but we overcomplicate it. It's like we're treating something simple as if it is complex, and that's when it becomes complicated. If we treat something complex as if it is simple, then it becomes easy. I don't know. I don't know. It makes me think of like my freshman year in my freshman year engineering program, like we had to create a program that would take a bunch of different bits and assemble an image. And so we came up with this program that every image we put into it, it worked. But we got a mark that was like, well, the algorithm isn't complicated enough, or the program isn't complicated enough. And I'm like, well, how complex does it need to be if we're getting everything right? Like, give me the image that it can't assemble. And then, like, but did we oversimplify? They said we oversimplified it. I guess it was supposed to be hard. So our solution was supposed to be more complicated. And then it's like, how do you know? How do you know when you're oversimplifying something or when you're overcomplicating something? We don't. We just live life and we do our best. But like the Knight of Pentacles is like a do something energy. Like the Knight of Pentacles is the slowest knight. The Knight of Pentacles is not fast. The Knight of Pentacles, like, I don't know, for some reason it's making me think of this South Node in Taurus. Ooh, I need to. Well, I'm on this like health journey right now that kind of sort of just happened. It didn't really, but it kind of did. It didn't at all, but it kind of did. Like I had everything already, and then one day I just decided, you know. Um, but it's very like I'm doing this, but I'm still doing that, and so am I even getting the full benefits? Because you said like sticky toffee, and I was like, ooh, but I'm like maybe I should cut back on the sugar. I do have my favorite drink though, non-sponsored peanuts. But anyway, not the shortest live I've ever done. I should have known. It's been an hour. It'll be less than an hour because I'm going to end this. I hope you all have an amazing whenever you see this. I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. I hope that. Oh, is this my grandma? All right, I gotta go. Bye. Thanks for being here.